Hey, look, it's showtime. Bring it in, troops. Little Zoom quarantine from home situation. Happy quarantine show. David Thorpe, how are you?
All is well, my man.
So we're having lively pre-show conversation about the state of the Oklahoma City Thunder. We're very excited. Soon, Stan Van Gundy will be joining us from the bubble. It should be exciting. He's just going to arrive at some point. We don't know when. Probably about 11:30. If you're only here for Stan, we'll see you in a bit. But in the meantime, okay. Let's do this, David. The Billy Donovan is no longer the coach of the Thunder. Why?
This is what they're telling you is what different than what I'm going to say, which is I think Billy doesn't want to look at a 5-year window of building this amazing roster of young players that the Thunder have. He's done that. He built a program in Florida. The last 2 years at Oklahoma City have been a challenge. I think he wants Chris Paul. I think he wanted to know Chris Paul is back next year. And I think they'd have been mild contenders, I would say. And he's got some other options to go other places, maybe even Milwaukee, by the way, if they end up firing Bud. And Oklahoma City, Sam Presti cannot tell him we're definitely having Chris Paul back because I quite frankly think they're going to trade Chris Paul, which is smart. This is at his highest value he's ever going to have. And so I think they just decided, okay, we're going to let you not re-sign your contract and go sign somewhere else for a bunch of years. I think it's silly, but it is what it is.
A really interesting theory is Billy Donovan and Chris Paul love each other, right? It's very interesting. If it's true, then I love your idea. Like they're both going to Milwaukee together.
Oh, yes.
Chris Paul becomes the keep Giannis plan, which okay. I think that if Giannis doesn't sign a supermax extension the second they offer it to him, to me, in this case, I would completely trade his ass. Like, I would love the guy. He's amazing. I don't think he's some fundamentally flawed player. None of that. I think he's amazing. But I just think you can't put Milwaukee through this season of loading up. Anyway. Chris Paul, if you let the Bucks do somehow get Chris Paul or someone like Chris Paul, a big name, flashy,
old expensive guy.
So Chris Paul's got $41.4 million coming next year if there's a CBA, and then a player option for $44.2 the season after that. Players at his agent position are essentially never good. I think Daryl Morey's thinking that he just got rid of one of the worst contracts in the league, and then Sam Presti got a year. I got a great year out of Chris Paul, and now he's like, we are not paying this $85.6 million for the next 2 years of Chris Paul. And then now we get this thing where so the Bucks are like, oh, we need like a wild card to keep Giannis, to make a poker hand with Giannis, right? And might work. But to me, the most likely thing is like, this is how the Cavs tried to keep LeBron twice, is just by paying and paying and paying. What really happens is these old guys are never good enough to keep LeBron around. They cost minutes and touches for the young players. And then the LeBron in this character and Giannis just leaves anyway. Now you're stuck with your $85.6 million you got to pay Chris Paul. Anyway, I talked a lot there. What do you think?
So you made a point to me. We were on the phone earlier, and you said that Anthony Davis made just one of many jump shots yesterday in the game last night, and LeBron, who was resting while the Lakers did their big surge, which is not something we see a lot. Then LeBron was like, "Oh, you beautiful man," and he is. Davis is better than any teammate, but in terms of at the prime. Dwayne Wade at his prime was incredible. That's not the guy LeBron played with, right? And so Giannis doesn't have that. Although Chris Middleton is very good. Right? Yeah. He showed he's very good. But to keep getting old guys that are going to disappoint a little bit, I think your point is right. It is I also agree with you that I would trade him. As you know, I feel very strongly. I was wrong when I predicted many years ago at ESPN that once Chris Bosh left the Raptors to go to Miami for nothing, I said I said this publicly. No team will ever make that mistake again. We'll never see a situation again where a franchise level player will just be allowed to leave because he chooses another team and you didn't trade him for something. And I've been wrong so many times. It's embarrassing. I'm amazed you even allow me to talk to you as if I'm a basketball expert. It keeps happening. So, yes, I would say to Giannis, in every possible way that's friendly, here's our best deal, but all this. But if you don't sign it, we are 100% trading you at what's best for us, not what's best for you. We can't consider that. We've got to make ourselves whole. We've invested 5 years in you that are going down the drain now. We got a lot out of it. We won a lot of games, but it's a business. Clearly, it's a business because you don't want to come back. So we have to trade you. And I don't know if they will or not, or they wouldn't, but I would support it 100%.
Caleb, good point. The $44.2 million Chris Paul player option, and Caleb's like, Nate Duncan voice. I think he's going to be picking up that option.
Yeah, I said that a few minutes ago, Caleb. He couldn't play 10 years and make that money.
This is a tremendously interesting little game of chess, though. Chris Paul's the president of the Players Association. He is in every meeting about what's going to happen with the next CBA, and there will be forces in that room to blow up the CBA and reimagine anew, right? The owners will want to do it, and probably some players will, but not this player, right? Like, he has $80 million riding on preserving this CBA, which is, I mean, if I were like an incoming rookie worried about, getting fair value in the future, like, I would have to worry about how much Chris Paul was going to prioritize me when he has $80 million riding on just keeping it the way it is.
Yeah, this is why we all thought when they initially went on strike, which we all supported, I didn't think for 1 second that LeBron was not going to come back. He has more of a reason. He's going to get paid. He's still this incredible player. But I thought Chris Paul would win that. And I still do.
So Chris Paul's in play. Giannis is in play. Anthony Davis is not secured for next year. Wow.
Tell you what, though. I watched him when LeBron did his post-game interview last night, and I had the volume off, and he pulled his shirt out. I think it was probably soaking wet. I'm not sure what he was showing. I thought maybe he would show some blood on his jersey that was tucked in. It wasn't that. And Anthony Davis was waiting for him as he walked off the court. No, Anthony, in a local interview nearby, probably was. But they shared like a cool little handshake, almost like touched foreheads. Like there is a closeness with them. And we've said this before. We said this a year ago, not on Bring It In because we didn't have it. But how is Durant leaving Steph Curry? I can't imagine it. How is Kawhi leaving Siakam and that culture? But these are players that have lots of different variables going on in their lives. I don't know what Anthony Davis is. I wouldn't do a 5-year deal if I was Anthony Davis. But LeBron James last night was beyond incredible. It's one of the best performances I've ever seen in a non-championship game on both sides. He literally treaded water for his entire team early. Davis was very good. James was otherworldly. And then when they really needed defense at the rim, he had 4 block shots in a quarter. Like, what? What are you talking about? LeBron James getting 4 block shots in a quarter, but he did. Where are you going, Anthony? That's going to be better than that for another year or two.
Oh yeah, someone with a 25-year-old would be good, maybe. Like, wouldn't be the.
But they're just so LeBron's IQ. We talked about this before the year too. LeBron's understanding of how to play and how to win. If I'm Anthony Davis, and I don't know Anthony Davis, but I would say play with him until his wheels fall off, which might be in a year. I get it, right? We already can see signs where, like, if he's wide open and has a running start, he's going to dunk the ball. He'll look 25. When he's having to finish in traffic, it's not the same. It just isn't that it used to be. But if I'm telling Anthony Davis, if I knew him, learn everything you can about the game, understanding of how to anticipate what's happening. LeBron is playing chess while he's on the court. That's so next to impossible to do. So you'll see him just standing there. We wrote about it the other day, on Monday, and he'll make a play at the rim off of a triple threat jab, but he's reading all of it. And you can see he's calculating the odds. Have you ever seen the Sherlock Holmes movies directed by Guy Ritchie, where Sherlock Holmes predicts what's going to happen? It just happened. They're like 5 years old. Yeah. Sherlock Holmes will play an entire fight scene, and Guy Ritchie plays it out, but it hasn't happened yet. That's LeBron playing basketball right now. So learn as much as you can from him. Then do whatever the hell you want to do. If the Lakers, I don't think they're some kind of great franchise. But these players have a lot going on. Like, if he left, it wouldn't shock me.
But I mean, we published just in the last couple months that basically when LeBron's not super elite, the Lakers can't win a championship.
Yeah.
Like that day's coming maybe this year, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if you're Anthony Davis, you got to think about that.
Yeah. No, for sure. There's nothing. The cupboard's bare for anything other than just role players. LeBron. I mean, they need to get this series over. Luckily, the Rockets get tired too. The Clippers just have so much more depth. If LA gets by the series, which I think they will, they need to beat the Clippers in 5 or 6, not 6 or 7, 4 or 5. It's going to be very hard to do. I still think they can do it because of those two, but betting against LeBron is just stupid. Like I did it one year. I picked against the Cavs 3 times in a row, and I was wrong all 3 times, and they won the championship. Of course, there were injuries that happened, but LeBron, he does have another level he can find. He picks his spots intelligently as well, which is what last night was so impressive. His spot was big. The game before that, it was 4 minutes. Last night, it was the whole first half and the fourth quarter.
It's really not a spot at that point.
Right. It's the Grand Canyon. It's a gigantic dog named Spot. It's huge. He was amazing.
Either LeBron's immortal or betting against him is one day smart.
Yeah, it's like there's a reason why you can't just continue to double your bet in blackjack. The casino at some point limits the bet. They do that for a reason. Right. Again, he doesn't have what he has had before for a whole game. He's not the same player. But I think in the finals they're going to go back to the Sunday, Wednesday. What is the three-day thing they do? Friday, Sunday, Wednesday, I think.
Is that what it is?
Man, maybe not. It's been a long time since you've seen the finals, right? It's a 3-day
Wednesday.
thing.
I don't think you get that many days off.
I thought they went like Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, but whatever. Someone will know what it is. That's better than what they're doing now, but not by a lot. Yeah. And after a Clippers series, probably Clippers, probably Lakers. The diminishing returns will start coming at some point. So Davis might just do another 1-year deal. He's protected.
Scary. So Bilal's mentioning in the chat that if the bubble thing works, and I guess it doesn't generate anything like the revenue that the non-bubble does, but maybe for now, but now the Chris Paul point comes up, right? If the players wanted to cut look, here's Stan. It's happening. He's early.
I tried actually.
There he is.
How you doing, Henry?
Great. How are you?
Good. I tried to get on earlier. Actually, I was, but I was having trouble getting in. So
everything's hard in 2020, man.
Yeah, you aren't kidding about that. You are not kidding.
All right. So you missed our exciting intro where we've hatched some conspiracy theories about Billy Donovan's parting ways with the Thunder. What do you think about Billy Donovan and Chris Paul reuniting with the Bucks?
Okay. I don't know if there's if Billy Donovan and Chris Paul have orchestrated it to be a
no. I don't think they have
deal. No, I don't see that happening.
But well, okay. We opened on a conspiracy theory note, but David's pointing out that Billy was willing to leave because he loved Chris Paul and wanted to play with Chris Paul. And then we're talking about the Bucks. There's this rumors that they want to try to get Chris Paul as a way to keep Giannis. So then it's not a big leap after that, I guess.
Yeah. Look, I mean, who wouldn't want Chris Paul other than the Houston Rockets, I guess? But Chris Paul was incredible this year. Really incredible. Should have been in the MVP conversation at least, and had gotten some votes for what he did leading that team in Oklahoma City. I think there's a lot of places that he would be a great fit. It'll just be interesting to see what Oklahoma City's able to get in return for him if they want to make that deal.
It's we just looked it up. It's $85.6 million he has coming over the next 2 seasons, though. That's a lot of dough.
It is, but if you put him in a situation where you're playing for something, my impression is that when he first went to Oklahoma City, he expected to be traded, and he looked at Oklahoma City as a rebuild. And then he got there, and he liked the players around him, and they got off to a little bit of a rough start early in the year, but started to get better. And I think he saw like, wow, this is pretty good. And so I think if you put Chris Paul in a situation with the right people around him where he thinks he can win, then I think he's still going to be a very effective player. Yeah, it's big money, but it's big money for all the stars in the league. And this was a guy that I think legitimately should have been in the top 5 or 6 people in the MVP conversation anyway. So, you know, a lot of people he would help out there. I mean, I'm hearing his name with everybody, you know. I mean, Philly's going to get him, and the Bucks are going to get him. And, you know, the bottom line is he's not a free agent. So who's going to get him is, if anybody other than Oklahoma City is going to get him, it's whoever can offer Oklahoma City the best deal. Sam Presti's not trying to find the best fit for Chris Paul. He's trying to find the best deal for Oklahoma City.
He's going to win another trade now. Like, he is killing it. Like, he got so much value the last time around, and for the Paul George thing. Like, and now he's going to get another haul.
Well, I wouldn't say he won every trade. If we go back to the Harden deal, I would say, not so good on that account. Yeah. So nobody wins them all. But you're right. The Paul George thing was very, very fortunate for Oklahoma City because the Clippers had to do something. Because it wasn't just getting Paul George. They had to get Paul George to get Kawhi Leonard. And so, you know, Sam Presti had a lot of leverage in that deal. Let's put it that way. He's not going to have the same kind of leverage here with Chris Paul. But Chris Paul's a difference maker. And if a contender is willing to make that deal, you know, they've got to have the assets to send back, though. That's going to be the problem. And Sam Presti's not going to want to take on a lot of money. It's not going to be easy, but we'll see. I mean, and we'll see what he does with Gallinari, too, who could also make – he was maybe the most underrated guy on that team, underestimated. I think he always has been. Yeah. When he's healthy, which has been the issue, but when he's healthy, he has been an outstanding offensive player for a long time. And I think in today's game, where there's a lot of switching, I think he's one of the best guys exploiting switches in the league. Yeah, he's got a lot of value to people. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him on the free agent market.
Yeah, Henry, are you there? Yeah, you froze.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine.
Go ahead, David. There you go. Let's
go. I want to Sam, we watched the game last night. I want to get your assessment on, and Henry's got a bunch of questions, but just to finish the thought on Oklahoma City, because it just happened last night. Billy did a fantastic job this season. No one would argue that. And if you look over 5 years, Henry and I just talked about this, what better franchise is there to be coaching than a franchise loaded with all those young players and future first-round picks? And yet what they said was Billy wanted clarification of where the franchise is going. To me, that means, are you keeping Chris Paul? We can try to win again and win even more next year, and maybe trade a couple assets to get better next year as a contender, dealing with Davis, LeBron, Kawhi, and Paul George. And when he couldn't get that, he said, I'll just, someone else is going to hire Billy. I can't get my arms around any of the reason why this is happening, because what more could you have asked Billy to do this year? And Sam is not stupid. I'm friends with Presti 20 plus years. He's a bright man. So what else could there be?
Well, I think the part nobody wants to talk about is the contract negotiations with Billy. And so I think it's going to get different for coaches in general this year. These owners are losing money with this whole situation in the pandemic. And you're locked into player contracts in a lot of ways when you're not locked in. So the head coach, David, in a lot of instances is probably going to be the biggest expense that you're not locked into, right? The easier way to save money. Now, nobody's going to want to come out and say that, but maybe it's just as simple as Oklahoma City didn't want to make a long-term commitment at big money, and Billy thought he deserved more or wanted more or even can get more elsewhere. So that's the part nobody's talking about. I'm sure they talked about the direction of the franchise, but beyond that, it was, I'm sure the commitment that the Thunder wanted to make to Billy Donovan financially.
It's a great point. Billy can wait a year if the salaries are back to normal and get his big deal. It's an amazing point. You're right. I hadn't thought about it. He could have done a one-year deal at OKC too, but it's better off just wait and get a monster deal. Let's talk Lakers, Henry. Coach Van Gundy.
Really fast. These coaching agents who we all know must be freaking livid right now, right?
Oh yeah,
that's a big point. If the whole class is getting beat up, wow, yeah, good point. Okay, so the Lakers defense has been like this giant force in the playoffs for periods of like the Portland series, and now it's just like, what are they doing right? Why are they so amazing at bubble defense?
Well, look, they were great all year defensively, and I think it started with Frank Vogel's approach from day one of training camp all the way back in September. He said, look, we've got these stars, and we're going to be able to score, but if we want to get to where we want to get to and win a championship, we're going to have to defend. And that's the way they've gone at it all year, is as a defense-first team. He's gotten great buy-in from LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And if your two stars buy into what you're doing, then everybody's going to buy in. Frank's always been a very good defensive coach. And he had some good defensive philosophies on the bench with him too. Jason Kidd was a guy who wanted to, blitz and trap all the time and rotate out of it. He's got that. Lionel Hollins, who's not here in the bubble, but is on his staff, was a, man-to-man, mano-a-mano, physical, knock people around. So they've got a good diversity of ideas. And they've been great defensively. And then in this series, you've really seen them adapt thing. And last night, Houston got off to a great start, 64 points in the first half. They were hardly being locked down. But as the second half came, they went back to trapping James Harden virtually every time, really limited his shot attempts in the second half. They did a great job rotating out of it and getting to the three-point line. It's very hard to hold the Houston Rockets to only 33-point attempts. But they were able to do that last night. So even though for the second straight game, Houston shot the ball well from three, they didn't get a lot of attempts, and they started to dominate the boards. Every game they've been better on the Lakers have been better on both boards. So it's all coming together for them. I think one of the biggest things for them in this series, James Harden has exactly 5 points in each of the 3 fourth quarters. So when it's come crunch time, they've taken the leading scorer in the league out. He has a combined 12 field goal attempts in those 3 fourth quarters and 4 free throw attempts for the guy who leads the league in free throw attempts. So when you get to the fourth quarter, they were down 2 in game 2 and came back and won by 8. And even last night and win by 10. Their defense overall has been good, but their fourth quarter defense has been stifling.
Yeah, one thing I noticed is, people aren't sure about KCP and what his role can be in terms of performing consistently, but he's their fastest defender in the half court. I think your point on rotations is great, but it's noticeable to me the most with him. He is flying to places. He doesn't always anticipate as well as AD and certainly LeBron and Rondo, who I also think is a big factor on the IQ part of that team. Henry and I were talking earlier. Rondo's shooting great. No one really expects that all the time. But his knowledge of the game, his experience of understanding scouting reports and executing the plan helps people like KCP make sure he's prepared and just be an athlete. They don't have a lot of those guys. They don't have a lot of guys. Caruso's a good athlete too. Fly around, and you know this, Coach. One of your best attributes I thought in Orlando is your guys always knew what they were supposed to do. When your teams were at their best and the best defensive team in the league, everyone knew where they were supposed to be. The millisecond they should have known, give or take. And that's a big factor. And instead of just running around like athletes, you have to be thinkers. And I think the IQ of that team is helping people like KCP know what their job is, which is to race with purpose.
No, that's a great point. Look, David, I've said for years whether I'm talking to high school coaches or a clinic or just to fans, the most underrated thing about NBA players, the good NBA players, is their intelligence at what they do. And it was an interesting point the other day when, we sat down, not sat down, we sat on Zoom with Nick Nurse before Game 5 of his series with Boston. And we were talking about all the different defenses Nick Nurse throws out there. I mean, box in 1, diamond in 1, triangle in 2. He's changed the way he plays his zone throughout the season and throughout the series. They'll blitz on pick and rolls. They'll drop on, all this stuff. And I asked him from a coaching standpoint, how do you find time to practice all that? And he laughed and he said, we don't. We show it and we go out and walk through it. And he said, but I've got really smart guys who play really hard. Well, that's a pretty good combination right there. If you've got smart guys and, like you say, who know what their job is and then they'll put in the effort to do it, you can do a lot of different things. And so we've seen more of that out of the Lakers in this series because Houston's a very unique team. So they're not going in and just saying, okay, we're just going to play our base defense because Houston is different. And so trapping Harden, but different than everybody else. They're not just running at Harden at half court. They're trying to get that shot clock down a little bit first. And as Harden winds up to go into his move, now they're coming. Now, he's been able to shoot a couple threes before the double team got there. But for the most part, what they've done on their double teams by coming at him later in the clock is Houston hasn't had time to attack those rotations. It cuts down 2 or 3 passes, an extra drive and kick. It's been very smart. Frank says they have very precise trigger points about their money, done a great job. And then they went last night and didn't do it in the first half. They went 1-on-1. Harden had 21 points at the half. They limited the 3-point shooting, and then they came at him in the second half. So it's been fun to watch them as a defensive team and all the things they've been able to do in this series. And I think they have the versatility to throw a lot of things at Houston. And I'm not sure Houston has the versatility to attack in a multitude of ways. I think they're locked into how they play. It's hard to guard, but it's one way that they play.
I was tweeting last night about the box and 1 on Eric Gordon, of all people.
Yeah.
And you said it. It didn't work, but Vogel has said in one of those after-court interviews, we're just trying to change up our looks. And that's smart. If you can occupy the Rockets thinking a little bit and suck that 24-second clock down some, it makes a difference. And then you noticed last night some poor execution by the Lakers early in the second half when they were trying to double. The double team was coming from the top side, which means the guy guarding the ball has to get on the bottom side so you can get the trap. And they executed poorly, but they got better at that. They cleaned that up. And next game might be different, Henry. They might trap from the bottom. Just give James something different to look at. And it's working, as Coach Van Gundy just said. He's not this. We've seen this before with James Harden, by the way. His fourth quarters are not superlative. Like the 4 minutes that LeBron had at the beginning of game 2 in the fourth quarter, the end of the third quarter possession, then the first 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. We haven't seen that from Harden. If we do, we might have an even series. But we haven't yet, and that's partly because of what the Lakers are doing, I think.
Well, no question. And here's the thing. James Harden has been phenomenal. I mean, his efficiency has been great. The thing I admire about James Harden throughout the year when people double team him is he'll willingly just make the right play over and over and over again. You know, I mean, he's going to get the ball to where it needs to go to give Houston an advantage. But if you're the Los Angeles Lakers, you're saying, all right, let's make somebody else make a play.
Yeah.
You know, I'll live with that. Even though they get an advantage, initially they'll be 4-on-3. I'd rather take my chances with that than with James Harden. And the one weakness I would say with James Harden, and I'm not sure there are any others because he's passed the ball so well, he's made the right read. But when he gives the ball up, unlike, say, Steph Curry, he stops. He makes the pass, he stops. The Lakers are able to deny him the ball back. You know, Steph Curry, when he gives the ball up, is on the run, and he's really hard to guard. James Harden does not do that. James Harden is only active with the basketball. And I think that's the one weakness in his game. And it's showing up in the second halves of these last two games that if you can make him give it up, he's out of the possession.
Mm-hmm. David, there's something about sending him right or left where the Lakers are doing it differently.
So, Coach, James Harden's impossible to guard, so that's granted. But it's fair to say he's not as good if he's going right, especially if you're making him finish right. And in years past, teams have tried it and not tried it, and no one in the playoffs is doing that right now. They're playing him square, depending on where he is in the court a little bit. And I'm surprised at that. You've coached against him many times. Didn't you at least try to start him right, or in some cases, if he was going right, keep him right? Because when he goes back left, he's almost always making that shot around the rim.
Well, I think it's sort of a mixed bag, David, because
the step back?
His step back is best to the right.
Yeah.
And if you open up your stance too much, sending him right, then he gets the angle. And like you say, he's able to get back to his left hand. And so I thought that the best individual defense I've ever seen on James Harden was Lou Dort from Oklahoma City.
For sure.
I mean, and what Lou Dort did is he played him square, so he didn't change the angle of his body, but he did move over onto his left hand a little bit. So he wasn't going to get a straight line left-handed drive. I thought his body position and technique were fantastic. Obviously, he is both strong and very quick laterally, so he has the physical characteristics. But then where I thought Lou Dort, as a young player, is anything from anybody else, is he was so disciplined. I mean, he just, other than one game, he just didn't foul him. He didn't give him his free throw attempts, which to me is the number one thing you do on James Harden. And Lou Dort would play him tough. He'd step back. Lou Dort would get a hand up. He would not try to come into his airspace. I thought it was perfect defense, but I thought the way that Billy Donovan had him play was great. Square, moved over maybe so that, say, his nose was more on Harden's left shoulder, but not opened up, and try to keep him in front of you. I just thought it was tremendous. Oklahoma City just couldn't quite get it done at the end, but let's face it. I mean, the defense that Lou Dort played on him throughout the series was incredible. And let's not forget that Lou Dort didn't play game one.
Right.
And so it was a 3-3 6-game series with Lou Dort. And who knows if we had one more game.
Right. Great point. So, Coach, David Thorpe, my friend, has been making this sort of gentle point since 2006 or 2005 to me. And the best way to tell it is this, which was I was at the 2007 finals, LeBron's first finals, and the Spurs are just like win. And at some point, I'm on the phone. David's telling me what's happening on the court because I don't know basketball as well as he does. And basically, he's heartbroken because he's like, the Cavs just keep doing the same stuff and thinking it's going to change, but they're overmatched here, right? It's not working, and there's a sort of a timidity to like just try innovative coaching techniques. And now we talk about this year after year after year. This year we talk about it with the Bucks. where, it wasn't working. And then it didn't, only once Giannis was out did we see significantly different approaches. What do you think of David's sort of general take? And then if it does or doesn't apply to the Bucks?
Well,
and
look,
David, did I summarize correctly what your position is? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but right? Is that right?
Well, yeah. So basically, Coach Van Gundy, all I'm saying is in that particular series, I just got to ESPN that first year in 2007. The Spurs were this amazing fourth quarter team with brilliant experience. LeBron was a young kid, and these games were down to the wire kind of games, which are coin flip games. And you'd think normally it's 50-50 coin flip games. But against that team, they were going to win 75% of them. It turns out they won 100% of them. And I thought the Cavaliers needed to do something different to try to get themselves a 10-point lead or something. But you can't go back and forth with that team. And Milwaukee yesterday, I don't know if you caught the game because you were preparing for your game, but I loved what the Bucks ran offensively for much of the game yesterday. Lots more false motion, second side, third side. They didn't just put the ball in the middle like when Giannis was there and they didn't run 1-4 flat. It was two wings, two corners, Giannis at the top, and everyone knew what was going on. Yesterday was all over the place, and they looked terrific. And if Giannis plays in that offense, I think Milwaukee could have won the series. So, yeah, my point is, and I understand the stubbornness, why you stick with what's won you so many games, but we want your thoughts on that innovative approach when you realize what you've always done isn't working so great.
Well, I would say two things on that. Maybe three, I guess. But number one, the league's gotten more simple. We don't see as much offense from any of the teams. Playbooks have shrunk, and I think it has to do with, wanting to play more open, out in the open and with more freedom because exploit the defenses. But also, the trend has been to a lot less practice time. And it's hard to add a lot of things if you're not spending time on the court. So the league's become simpler, I think, is one thing. And then the second thing is this has been a weird situation because normally what you do, you go to training camp and you get your base concepts in, you get your base offense in. And then you add as the year goes on, and you've got this long regular season, and you start adding and adding and adding, and you can experiment with things. So by the time you get to the playoffs, you've got a lot there to choose from. This was different. We took 4.5 months off, and I don't look at this as a continuation of what was going on in March. This is as long a layoff as teams ever get, 4.5 months. So you come back to 3 weeks of training camp, and then you're quickly into games that matter. They don't have that stuff, teams. They don't have enough in right now to have stuff that they can go to. So I think that is a problem at this point. And I do think teams who've got a little more diversity to what they do, it helps. I think it's one of the reasons that Miami has had the success they have. They get a little bit better movement in their offense. We've sort of gone away from movement. It's all been pick and rolls and isolations and fast breaks. And, of course, the number one trend is, the 5-out offense with our big guy up high and we play through him, which I think is a required NBA offense now. Like, you have to – I think Adam Silver instituted that rule that all 30 teams have to have that as their base offense. And it is effective and all of that. But I do think having a little bit more diversity to what you do is helpful. But the game has changed a lot in that way. And we're just relying on the incredible skills of the best players on each team. And let's face it, that's worked pretty well for a lot of these teams.
You're right about Miami. I'm sorry, Henry, just real quick on Miami. We've talked about this, Henry and I have, that they've been the most impressive offense in terms of what they've run and how well they've run it since we first started with their seeding games. And just watching the game yesterday, and I know you appreciate this, and I was going to your games in Miami. Udonis was the first ever player I trained when you were coaching there. And I remember when Spo was just the video guy. He's running great stuff. And I'm watching Tyler Hero, who's 20 years old, who on occasion will break you down one-on-one. But what he does, and this is brilliant by him and obviously great coaching, he's looking for Bam to play a two-man game off dribble handoff, which is pretty much impossible to guard with a guy that can pass like him in space when you can shoot like Tyler. But most young guys just want the ball in their hands and spread it out or maybe get a ball screen. You're hard to guard without having to dribble. And so I wish more young players would realize the way he's using his teammate and the way Eric creates that structure in their offense makes you much, much harder to guard, and you'll play more as long as you try hard on defense. Teams should, if DiVincenzo could do that for Milwaukee more and was doing it some yesterday, our young guys need to learn how to play with good passing bigs more and better than they do now.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I also think it goes to not only the offense they've built there, but then the way they develop their players into that. And so, you know, Duncan Robinson comes to them as a great shooter, but they didn't make him into a spot-up guy who just spaced the floor.
True.
And the same with Tyler Hero. Because if you're just a spot-up guy, number one, you have to be a true 3-and-D guy. And Duncan Robinson will get better defensively. He's never going to have the D part of the 3-and-D. So he's got to be more of a threat than be a spot-up shooter. And so from the beginning, when they get those guys, what they do with them in development, I have a guy who played for me twice, Malik Allen, and worked for me in Detroit and is on their staff now. Like, those guys don't shoot spot-up shots in their development. Like, everything is on the move, and they get them going, as we see, full speed, and that's hard. Like, Kyle Korver to me was always unique in that he could run full speed, not slow down coming into the handoff or not slow down coming off the screen to catch the ball and boom, shoot. And now we're seeing Miami's got Hero and Duncan Robinson who can do that. And so not only is it great offense they build, but you know, David, as someone who works with players, that's a hard skill. You've got
super hard.
Yeah, your footwork and your balance and being able to come to a stop. There's a great college coach, Lenny Acuff, at Lipscomb now, and I heard a clinic from him in the spring, and he talked about all of the great things you have to develop as a player, and he's the first guy that I've ever heard emphasize the importance of being able to stop. And I had somebody last year tell me that the greatest athletic ability that Luka Doncic has is his ability to decelerate. Yeah. And that's what these Heat guys have to do. Full speed, take the hand off, and get straight up and down into your shot. Because if you're flying to your right or your left, your percentage is going way down. So it's great offense. It's great.
It's a morning show, but I think the rule is if someone says Lipscomb, you drink, right?
Coach, it's the single most prevalent thing in our drills. Coach Pannone, who is a mutual friend of ours, was in my gym the other day. We practice sudden starts and sudden stops more than anything. Not just for the shooting, for anything. With the ball, we also work on it from a defensive standpoint because you have to be able to defend that kind of stuff. And I told Ryan, we do no spot shooting. He knows. Ryan was with me for 15 years. We don't do spot shooting. They do enough of spot shooting in the gym and their NBA teams. It's easy. That's not hard. If you can shoot on the move, shooting standing still is much, much easier. That doesn't need as much practice in the offseason.
Don't forget, we've heard James Harden tests as a pretty average for an NBA shooting guard athletically at everything except stopping. He's the best. Super elite at stopping, right? Which is apparently a pretty helpful skill.
Right, Henry, I think he's number one in deceleration contrast, and Luka was number two, right?
Yeah, that's what
from P3. Yeah, that deceleration.
Yeah, and it's a great offensive. You know, we tend to think of athletic ability when people say, "Oh, the guy's an athlete." We tend to be just talking about running and jumping.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other things athletically, like some of these guys who can really run and jump, maybe because they've got higher center of gravity or whatever, they really aren't very athletic laterally. You know, they have trouble getting in a stance and moving and guarding. And I'll hear people say, oh, he should be better defensively. He's so athletic. Well, he's not athletic in that way. And some of these guys who are really, really fast don't stop well. You know, they have trouble decelerating. And it's become even a bigger skill, the deceleration, with all the switching is going on. Because if you're a guard and a big guy switches on you and you're just going to try to beat them full speed to the rim, well, you might get that half a step on them, but they're just going to turn and run to the rim, and you're going to have a tough finish over the top. What you see the better guys doing is full speed, stop, lift the guy up, draw the foul. Like, you know, these are things that you have to have in your game now in attacking these guys. And the best players have it. And the ones who struggle are just trying to win a foot race and a jumping contest all of the time. And while that may work at times, it's certainly not going to work all the time.
The thing that I always think about, which is like a super athletic skill, is how many different crazy things can happen where you stay like balanced and on the balls of your feet and ready to move whichever direction you have to move next, right? And you see some of these 7-footers are like, you know, they might be athletic, but they are not ready to move in the direction the play is going.
Well, no, and that's why I think if you look at a guy like Bam Adebayo, and he's not 7 feet, I get that, but super athletic for a big guy. And I wouldn't say, when I'm saying super athletic, yeah, he has quickness and he can jump, but he's not, like, you wouldn't put him in your top 10 or top 20 even as far as great leapers or anything else. He has exactly what you're talking about, Henry. I mean, he's on balance. He can move both offensively and defensively. You know, he can catch the ball on the roll and be on balance to make the next pass, or be on balance to slide one way or another around a rotating defender and finish. And defensively, he can get down and move his feet, and he can help and recover to his guy and contest. You know, that's athletic ability. And I think too often we define it way too narrowly. But with big guys, it's becoming a very big thing. And I will also say this. I don't know how many people in the league have extreme athleticism in all of those areas. So it's a matter of how you're defining it to say somebody's athletic or not. Like if you watch Russell Westbrook, obviously one of the best, most athletic guards we've ever had. His speed, quickness, jumping are incredible. He's not a very good athlete laterally. He's not. You know, people want to fault his effort and things like that defensively because what they see is, oh, this guy's a great athlete. He should be able to pressure the ball full court and do all these things. Well, he's not awful laterally, but that's not where his athletic abilities are. You know, whereas Lou Dort, man, I mean, laterally, he's as good as he gets. To be careful when we just throw out the term athletic.
Right. I feel like you're talking about Michael Porter Jr., who would look like he should be an Olympian, but he can't slide at all. And you know what? Robert Covington can't anymore either the way he used to. LeBron has singled him out in game 2. He got the switch to go one-on-one on Covington. He just can't slide the same. But I have to ask you something, Coach Van Gundy. I don't know if this is driving you as crazy. It drives me. In my rules of defense, number 1 with a bullet is do not foul. We bail players out all the time at the rim. They're not going to finish against our trees and our guards foul or our big guys swipe down. But it's gone to another level in the postseason. We're fouling three-point shooters and jump shooters who are they're going to make 2 of every 10 if they take. What is going on? Why are they fouling so much when they shouldn't be fouling?
Well, I think to put a positive on it, I think while they're doing it is they have an extreme desire to get stops, right? And
they're
so
being competitive.
They don't want that guy to step back and shoot the 3 and make it on them. They want to stop everything. You know, it's pretty easy as a coach to say, okay, we're not going to foul. The hard part is if that's your only objective, well, then the softer I play, the better I'm going to be and everything else. The hard part is how do I defend aggressively and not foul?
Right.
And I think as a coach, what it comes down to is a little bit what you're talking about, not a little bit, a lot. Like what fouls are you okay with as a coach? And what fouls are you not okay with? So for me, if I'm trying to rotate over and get my body in front of somebody to take a charge, and I'm a little late and I take a block, I can live with that foul.
Agreed.
If
Yes.
I've got, I'm trying to keep somebody off the boards and I get a block out foul, I can live with that. I can even live with I'm fighting over a screen, which has become hard to do. As long as I'm not grabbing and holding, that's obvious to the referees. I can live with that. We're not going to foul a three-point shooter. I thought the great Bob McAdoo, when I worked with him in Miami, had a great one for our big guys. He would say to them all the time, a big guy should never get a foul below his shoulders. So should never get a foul stripping down on a guard. Right. Like if I'm going to get a foul, I'm going up to try to block the shot and maybe I leaned in a little bit, or I'm going over the top on a rebound. I can live with that. So I think as a coach, you can't just say don't foul. You have to explain what you'll tolerate and what you won't tolerate. To me, it's the same. None of us want to turn the ball over. And so both coaches before the Laker game last night said to us in our conference calls with them, we've got to cut down our turnovers. And we all say that as coaches all the time. Well, what do you mean? Because if I don't want to turn the ball over, I may never take a chance to throw that pass to a backdoor cutter. I may never take a chance on throwing the lob that's open to Anthony Davis because they're harder plays. So to me, when it comes to turnovers, there's two questions. Who can turn the ball over? And what kind of turnovers we take. So on the who, to me, like LeBron James is going to turn the ball over some. James Harden's going to turn the ball over some. You know why? Because you're asking them to make every play and create every shot. And you don't want them looking over their shoulder or afraid to make a play, or you'll never score. You'll never get a good shot. But if you're a guy, P.J. Tucker, okay, great example, and he does a good job, he should never turn the ball over. Because what you're asking P.J. Tucker to do is shoot the corner three or move the ball back to somebody else. So those guys can't turn the ball over. And then, just like we said with fouls, what kind of turnovers are okay? I'm okay if, I made the right read and the guy's going back door and I made the pass and it's a little behind him. We just need to go back and work on the passing a little. But I'm not upset that you made that pass. But if I just take the ball one hand off the dribble, making a simple pass to the wing, and it slips out of my hand because I didn't get two hands on it, and it goes out of bounds. Or if I try to catch the ball with one hand, get in the end, turnovers we've got to cut. So I don't think it's detailed enough coaching to say don't foul or don't turn the ball over. I think we've got to get more into the weeds there, talking to guys about what we really mean, because we don't want guys to be soft defensively and we don't want them afraid to make plays offensively.
I just said this to Henry on Tuesday, yesterday. Too many coaches are saying what to do. They're not doing the how to do it. And that's a big part of it. Our teaching point is here's what we want. Here's how we get that done. We talk a lot about walling up and talling up and those kind of things. I have to laugh, though, Coach, when you talk about turnovers. I remember hearing Rafer Alston talk about playing for you, and he wouldn't throw a lob in a game. And I don't remember who was yelling at him. And he's like, I'm not throwing that lob and turning it over. And they're like, but you're skeptical, Lou. Of course you've got to throw the lob. He's like, I can't turn that ball over. But I think he learned. Rafer became a great success story. He learned how to play the odds. When it was time to make that pass, and it wasn't about style. It was about substance. The best pass is the lob. It's when the best pass isn't the lob and you still throw it to be cool, that's the problem. That's when you get some trouble. Rafer learned how to be one kind of player into a winning basketball player, and you had him.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And it's funny. I had two guys in my career who sort of came into the league known for their flair, let's say. Rafer Alston and Jason Williams.
Williams, yeah.
And, so you had Skip to My Lou and White Chocolate, and those guys could do unbelievable things with the ball. But to their credit, they became intelligent, winning NBA players because they, like you said, they learned when you take a chance and when you don't. And the one thing I think fans need to focus in on, but even more younger players, is yes, the best players on our teams in the NBA will do some incredible things that the average guy can't do. So you'll see 2 or 3 plays a game where they just do things nobody else can do. But in large part, what sets apart the best players from the guys that aren't as good is the best players make the routine, simple plays over and over and over again without making mistakes. They deliver the ball on target to the shooter so he can be in rhythm and shoot the ball. Whereas the guy who's not as good doesn't show up on the stat sheet because it's not a turnover, but Tyler Hero runs off the screen and he's got to reach for the ball. Doesn't get the shot. The best players make the routine plays consistently. That is, to me, what sets them apart more than their ability to make the phenomenal plays.
I think about this all the time in regular life. It's not what might you do, it's how likely are you to do something good, right? The might thing is an outlier moment, right? It just doesn't, that's not really definitional. Listen, we don't have a ton of time. If we could, and by the way, the thing I'm super thankful for besides your time is your voice. Do you have to manage it? Do you have to drink special tea and stuff to keep your voice working?
No, I always had a problem with my voice when I was coaching, particularly training camp. I had to live on tea and honey, because you're going twice a day and the whole thing. But this is, once a day, sit down and talk in a fairly normal voice for 2.5 hours. It's actually not been a strain. Now, I did have a little bit. My brothers had 4 or 5 of these days with ESPN where they've done 2 games in a day. That's a little tougher. I had one of those days, and I did feel it a little bit the next morning.
Yeah.
So I'm going to really fast. We're going to have the last question on the show. I was from Gerard. It'll be in a second, but I want to really fast do 1-word answers on just a few simple things if we could. Who's going to win the East? Okay.
Oh, I don't know. I'm going to pass on that.
Pass. That's 1 word.
Okay. Who's going to win the West?
Clippers.
Okay. Would the Rockets be better with Clint Capella?
Maybe.
LeBron or MJ?
LeBron.
True or false? Giannis will be a Buck next year.
True.
Impressive in the bubble.
Lou Dort.
Most impressive scorer in the bubble.
Jamal Murray. Yeah, and look, other people have scored more, but we expected it. Jamal Murray has been, I think, the most impressive just because of the way he lifted himself.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you don't have a pick for who's going to win the championship since you don't know who's going to win the East.
I'm going to pick the Clippers.
Okay.
I just think they have the deepest roster. They can play at both ends of the floor. They have an answer to everything. I mean, look, they've got 2 big-time scorers in their starting lineup. They've got the 3rd guy in Lou Williams. Marcus Morris can get his own shot and score. Montrezl Harrell's a big scorer. I mean, they've just got a lot of different options with that team, and they have a toughness and stuff defensively. They haven't played as well as I had expected them to play, but I still think they're just, even if they have to slog through some of these series, I just think they've got too much.
Yeah, makes sense. Judy, can we have Gerard now, please? Mr. Hector, paging Mr. Hector. There he is. Gerard Hector live from New York City / Paris.
Paris. That was awesome, Coach. Thank you for joining us. So this is perfect. We're clearly simpatico, and we've been mind melding this whole time because my question wasn't about the Clippers. What one of the things that you coaches always talk about is teams being connected, right? Particularly defensively, playing on a string, that kind of thing. The Clippers have one guy in Kawhi and a head coach in Doc who obviously have finals experience, won champs, etc. The rest of their guys do not have that experience. I, too, like you, think they are going to win the whole thing, etc. But they have these lulls, right, where it's just like it's just not all there with them and they're not all connected. And I feel like Doc and Kawhi can always reach into that reserve of we know how to get this done. The rest of those dudes don't have that reserve to go into. As a coach, and with limited practices and all that, how are you getting your guys to do that connectivity thing and be on a string and all that when they don't have the requisite time together?
Well, yeah, and that's a great question. And Doc addressed it, I think, early here in the bubble, and he's absolutely right. You can't. There's no substitute for that. There's no way. That takes time. And with them, they've had guys in and out of the lineup all year. And then they came down here. They had guys in and out of the bubble. He thought he was finally going to have that 3 weeks to sort of bring it all together, and they didn't. And so they're having to do it on the fly. And that's the only hesitation to me that I have in the Clippers and why somebody might beat them, because you're right. They don't have that. They're not as connected as, say, the Boston Celtics or the Toronto Raptors or even the LA Lakers. But I still think at the end of the day, they'll become a little more connected with each game. And at the end of the day, their talent, they'll get close enough to that their talent will be enough.
Kawhi is that nice X factor. It's like, well, this guy can help us figure it out.
He's had some success. He's had some success in those situations.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
We agree, Coach. I wrote a piece. I picked the Lakers slightly over the Clippers for this exact reason, that the Lakers have the dynamic duo, and the Clippers just haven't had the time to gel. But if they did, they're the deeper team. They have weapons on both sides. If they do gel, then they'll win the championship. If they don't, I think it's going to be much, much tougher with the way Davis and LeBron are playing.
When we started in September, when everybody went to training camp, I think the series everybody has been waiting for, and now because of the pandemic, waiting a long, long time for, has been for Lakers Clippers. That's what everybody has wanted to see. The rivalry right there in the same city. Two great teams. I think that's what everybody's looking forward to. I think right now, fans, if you're not specifically a fan of Houston or Denver, fans out there are rooting for those two teams right now because they want to see them play. I mean, that's the one. I think even more so than whatever happens in the finals, though people will certainly love seeing the finals. But that series is the one everybody's anticipated for a long, long time.
Yep.
If you're following the money, Lakers Celtics is a pretty popular option historically.
It's interesting. I think the Lakers in particular, right, have, even in these years where they haven't made the playoffs and been bad, they have such a following that the ratings for their games have been good. And that's why you keep, you're wondering after a while, why are the Lakers on national TV? Well, they're on national TV because they have a lot of people that follow them. And there's no question. And the Celtics have the same thing. And what's amazing about the Celtics, we were on the bus the other day heading over to the games with some people from Boston. And as rabid as their fans are, people from Boston will tell you that they're the fourth most popular team in Boston, behind the Bruins, Patriots, and Red Sox. Not even in that order, but Boston fans are so rabid about all their teams. The games, I've had a couple of games in that series, 3 of them, I guess, and I coached Division II basketball up there in Massachusetts for a while, and I get all my guys and other people I knew up there texting me on those games all the time, and either I'm not giving the Celtics enough credit, or,
Hater.
do you think the Celtics can win the championship? I mean, Celtics fans are fantastic.
Yeah. Coach, we could talk all day. Thank you so much. And I want you to rest your voice a little bit.
That sounds good. Henry, David, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Talk to you
Coach.